I'm Kadie Philp. What's your favorite movie of all time? Does it have a female hero? What does the story tell us about gender roles and society? This episode, I'm taking you to Hollywood to examine how women have fought to challenge societal norms, address gender inequality, and reclaim space on screen. And how the stories told through film have influenced the way we construct and reinforce gender roles for women and men at work. From fluorescent lit cubicles to glammed up boardrooms, we're tracing the legacy of the 9 to 5 movement and asking, how do the stories we watch on screen reflect and reshape women's roles in the workforce? So, let's punch in, shall we? Let's rewind to the 1970s and how a grassroots labor movement shaped Hollywood storytelling, shifted conversations about women and work. So, we're in Boston in 1973, a year before the infamous desegregation race riots, where 2 office workers, Ellen Cassidy and Karen Nussbaum, are fed up. They are young professionals, and they're tired of being called girls in their 20s and 30s. They're tired of making half of what men earn for the same job. And they're tired of being undervalued and underappreciated with a token secretary lunch once a year where their male bosses hand them roses. Now, this is at a time when women's career choices were still significantly constrained with a high concentration of women in clerical work. What did they do? They organized. They call their movement 9 to 5, named after the hours they worked and the structure they wanted to dismantle. Their goals were revolutionary for the time. They wanted equal pay for equal work, protection against sexual harassment at work, pathways to promotion, and workplace dignity. So they formed the local 925 or 925, a union, and won a major lawsuit awarding $1.5 million in back wages to female employees. But just as powerful as that court victory was, were their public campaigns. They created worst boss contests. They wrote an offers bill of rights. And they coined the phrase, raises, not roses. And people took notice, especially people in Hollywood. In 1980, the movement got a megaphone when the film 9 to 5, starring Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, and Dolly Parton, exploded onto screens. If you haven't seen the film, it's one of my all-time favorites where 3 women, all in administrative roles, team up to take down their sexist boss. I mean, naturally, hilarity and calamity ensues. But redefining the office structure they sought to dismantle, the productivity and innovation they foster while their boss is in captivity, catches the attention of head office, who lauds all of their innovations, well, except one: equal pay. It was hilarious, yes, but also radical. The movie tackled real-world issues like wage theft, unwanted advances, stolen ideas, and the glass ceiling. It resonated with audience because it rang true. One reviewer of the film at the time of its release wrote that this isn't a fantasy, it's a documentary with jokes. And it wasn't just the film. Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 theme song for the movie became an anthem, climbing the charts and embedding the struggle for workplace equity into pop culture. Now today, Jennifer Aniston is producing a reboot of the 9 to 5 movie, reminding us that while some progress has been made, overall, the office politics and equity issues for women at work still haven't fully been addressed. Let's zoom out a bit. 9 to 5 wasn't the only film to reflect women's workplace struggles. It was just one reel in a long cinematic revolution.
I'm not looking for sympathy. I had a shot at, I don't want this. It's him. He's here. Do me a favor. Be me. Be my secretary.
Another favorite of mine was a film called Working Girl, released in 1988, where Melanie Griffith plays Tess, a soft-spoken secretary with ambition and brains, who finally lands her big break after getting credit for an idea her boss stole from her. Her idea led to a massive, profitable deal. Now, the movie pits 2 women against each other. Catherine, Tess's boss, has made it to the top. But there's only room for one woman at the top. Sound familiar? The film unfortunately characterizes female ambition as either manipulative or naive. And while Tess is an admirable protagonist, she doesn't fight or change the system. Instead, she learns to navigate within a system not made for women by learning how to play by the men's rules.
I feel comfortable using legal jargon in everyday life. I object.
So let's jump to the 21st century. With the You Go Girl and girl power movement of the late 90s in music. And in fact, you can hear more about that movement in our Level the Playing Field Season 3, Episode 2, called Punk, Pop, and Pay Gaps Gender Equity in the Music Industry. But like music, films in the early 2000s started to portray young women as empowered and challenging the status quo. One of the most celebrated films of 2001 was Legally Blonde, where Elle Woods, played by Reese Witherspoon, challenges every stereotype of the pretty sorority girl looking to earn her misses at university. Elle takes back her power after being dumped by her boyfriend because, well, she's too blonde and not smart enough. Now, initially, working to get into law school just to win her boyfriend back, she realizes that she can be both smart and beautiful. As her infamous line goes, "I'll show you how valuable Elle Woods can be." Her character gives young women a template to speak up and defend themselves. More than this, she reclaims femininity in spaces where it's dismissed as fluff, and she makes it her superpower. Now, contrast Legally Blonde entirely to Lara Croft Tomb Raider, also released in 2001, where the sexy protagonist of the famous video game franchise Tomb Raider jumps out of the console and onto the big screen. Having a female protagonist in a video game was a significant shift in gameplay centered around women, albeit she was an exaggerated, over-sexualized character. Now, the character Lara Croft begins to shift how we see women in video games and women as action heroes on the screen. I talked to Dr. Andrea Brathwaite about women in video games in episode 4 of season 3 of Level the Playing Field if you want to hear more about the evolution of women in video games. But for now, let's get back to the big screen where Lara Croft defeats the Illuminati in finding ancient artifacts. More striking about this film is that it was unusual at the time to have a woman lead actress headline a film in the summer blockbuster release months. But Angela Jolie playing Lara Croft did it, and Tomb Raider became known as one of the best game adaptations to film. It also clearly showed that women can be powerful action heroes.
Who are you?
My name is Andy Sachs. I recently graduated from Northwestern University.
And what are you doing here?
Well, I think I could do a good job as your assistant. And,
Now, let's move to a different vibe. Films in the early to mid 2000s continue to tell stories that show the challenges women face in their careers. Think about The Devil Wears Prada. Okay, we love it for its fashion montages, but its main characters raise the contradictions women face at work. Can we have it all? Miranda Priestley, played by Meryl Streep, is cold, powerful, and unapologetically demanding. Is she the villain or the hero? Or simply the product of the system? Anne Hathaway, playing Andrea Sachs, is naive and ambitious, and as she climbs the ladder to success, she wonders if it's worth it to sacrifice her values in order to succeed in a man's world. Again, on the big screen, producers are bringing to light the tension women face in being told we can have it all while trying to balance it all in competitive environments. The films that I've just shared largely told white women's stories from North America. Also changing on big screen across North America were stories about racialized women and women of color whose lived experiences were very different from Elle Woods, Lara Croft, and Andrea Sachs. Films like The Color Purple in 1985 brought to screen historical narratives of slavery, emancipation, and reclamation for Black women in America. And while the blockbuster Dreamgirls in 2006 was a vibrant celebration of Black women in music, it also showed us the underbelly of the exploitation of Black women in music and racism on stages across America. As Hollywood reconciles with these histories and stories, films are now starting to celebrate Black women's achievements, a long overdue storyline.
There's no mathematical formula for that. Because we can calculate launch and landing, but without this conversion, the capsule stays in orbit. We can't bring it back home.
One recent film, Hidden Figures, out in 2016, celebrates 3 Black women mathematicians at NASA, Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, and Mary Jackson, who were behind some of the biggest space breakthroughs of the 20th century. But no one knew. Hidden Figures brought their work to light, and it forced audiences to reckon with how many other women, especially women of color, have been systematically written out of workplace history. This story was more than representation. It was about recognition, restoration, and justice. And now, let's talk money. Despite all the progress on screen, with more female-centered stories being told, and women playing a host of different characters, and more women financing, producing, and acting in films, behind the scenes, women are still making less money. In Hollywood, actresses over 50 make nearly $4 million less than their male peers. Women of color are dramatically underpaid even compared to white women. Jennifer Lawrence, Taraji P. Henson, Olivia Colman, and Gabrielle Union have all publicly called out these pay disparities. And the problem isn't just pay, it's opportunity. Only 17% of directors in Canadian cinema are women. Only 21% are screenwriters. And men still dominate 77% of leadership roles. The good news? There are initiatives pushing for change. Telefilm Canada is working toward gender parity in funding. TIFF's Share Her Journey campaign is supporting women filmmakers across the board. Reese Witherspoon, our star of playing Elle Woods in Legally Blonde, has made it her mission to finance, produce, and tell more women-centered stories with her production company, Hello Sunshine. But access to top roles, director, producer, showrunner, is still dominated by men. Progress is being made, albeit very slowly. Well, why does this matter? As I talk about in episode 1 of season 3 of Level the Playing Field with Dr. Brathwaite, films don't just reflect culture, they shape it. It's called cultivation theory, and you can listen to episode 1 to learn more about how cultivation theory works. But essentially, what we see reflected to us on screen shapes what we believe to be true about gender roles, gender identity, and much, much more. A phenomenal example of this is the Bechdel-Wallace test. This is a test applied to scripts to understand the diversity of stories being told about women. The test is really simple. Are 2 women talking to each other about something other than a man? Now, you'd be surprised how many blockbusters fail that simple test, because stereotypes still abound on film. That's why we need to continue to demand better from writers and producers.
Hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie.
Hi, Barbie!
Perhaps that's why Barbie, in 2023, burst onto the screen with such success. At last, in front of us, we saw a well-known and beloved trope of women's beauty and femininity waking up and seeing the world around her, its dark, exploitative, and contradicting expectations on women to be perfect. And you have a man, Ken, waking up to patriarchy and loving it, yet finding it hard to cope with being Kenough, or just enough. America Ferrera's now famous monologue laid bare the impossible expectations placed on women, at work, at home, and everywhere in between. And the film called the whole system out.
It is literally impossible to be a woman. You are so beautiful and so smart, and it kills me that you don't think you're good enough. Like, We have to always be extraordinary.
Now, the films I've talked about raise really big questions. Can women succeed without sacrificing their personal lives? Do women have to be like men to lead? What does empowerment actually look like? Now, these are tough questions without direct, simple answers. What we do know is what Alexa Mezzo shared in episode 5 of season 3 of Level the Playing Field is that representation matters. We need to support women filmmakers, demand funding structures that reward equity, question the media we consume, and amplify the stories of women, especially those from marginalized communities. And we need to remember that change starts in offices, in writers' rooms, on set, and yes, in podcasts like this one. It starts with recognizing the legacies of movements like 9 to 5, not just as history, but as a blueprint. It means funding women-led projects, elevating diverse voices, and holding the industry accountable, not just for representation, but for remuneration. The 9 to 5 movement showed us what's possible when women come together and say, "We're fed up." And while the typewriters may be gone, the message still rings true. Raises, not roses. Here are 3 reminders from today's episode. The 9 to 5 movement wasn't just about office jobs. It was a catalyst for changing how we think about gender, power, and equity at work. Movies matter. Whether it's Working Girl, Barbie, or Hidden Figures, what we see on screen shapes what we believe is possible. Progress is happening, but it's far from done. Representation, recognition, and real pay equity still requires ongoing effort both on and off the screen. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow or subscribe and share this podcast. Until next time, let's keep asking questions, challenging norms, and working toward a more equitable world for women to work, live, and thrive.